these things that may be coming for our jobs?
As the agents get smarter, large language models grow, and the more you train it, it'll start almost like the Pac-Man thing. Trucka starts eating, going towards the complex. Bots, agents are going to be able to connect at a human level with people. You're going to be able to relate. And we can honestly say, as the agents get smarter,
that would probably blow the minds of people. Hi, my name is Will, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman podcast. On today's episode of the show, we have the absolute legend that is Victor Antonio. He is an author, he's a sales expert, and he's absolutely on the cutting edge of AI in sales. And that's what we're talking about in today's episode. We're talking about AI sales agents, what they are, how they work, and why they might be coming for your sales job in just the next 2 or 3 years. All of this is absolutely hitting us rapidly. There's so much development week on week that it's interesting and it's awesome, but it's also kind of scary. Everything that we talk about in this episode is available in the show notes of this podcast over at salesman.com. And with that, let's jump right into it. Victor, welcome back again and again and again. One of many interviews, but this one a few years ahead of the previous ones. Welcome back to the Salesman podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me back. Well, I missed you, Will. Can I say that? Yeah. Can I say that on the podcast? I missed you.
You can. That would be totally out of context for anyone who's a new listener. But you and I did a show for a couple of years, and you've been a guest on my show many times. So, Victor, for the audience, if you don't know him, Victor is an absolute legend. So, without stroking each other's egos and too much love coming across the screen, I've got a question for you. And for people in the know, this is not going to be a shock. For I imagine the majority of salespeople, this could actually be pretty shocking. Before we get into how they work, the future of them, what is a sales agent? Is there a definition? What are these things that may be coming for our jobs?
Yeah. I always say it's an algorithm that'll do things on your behalf. And everybody has their own definition of what that is. Some people call them not sales agents, they call them digital employees. There's all different types of names, but it's basically an autonomous algorithm that does a task or executes some type of outcome on your behalf. And when I say that to people, they're like, well, that's not possible. And I think what we're going to find out over the next few years, 2 or 3, that it is possible.
Is that the time frame you think we're looking at for this?
Yeah, Will, my moment, I don't know if we talked about this, my moment with AI agents came, I think the first one was, and you're familiar with Google Duplex Demo, right? Mm-hmm. This is where, I forget his name, Sundar Pichai, which is the CEO of Google, did this demo where the AI, almost like an Alexa, calls, a restaurant or hair salon just to book appointments. And I was like, that was my first, what is that? And it's not perfect, but I was like, what is that? And then there's a demo that I'm sure you've seen by Air.ai, which is, somebody downloaded a Tesla brochure and the AI agent, calls up and has this conversation using natural language processing. It, has this conversation and actually closes the person on coming in to do a test drive. And that was the moment I go, okay, these things may not be here, but they're close to being here. And that was like 2 years ago. And so, to me, AI agents are real. And the investment movements made by companies like, for example, Salesforce and their Agentforce platform is proof enough that it's moving in that direction. Even Microsoft with their Dynamics platform, I think just launched, their platform has like 1,800 pre-programmed agents. And that's a mind blower. I don't know if I'm going far down the rabbit hole too fast.
Let's touch on what are they, have you done demos with recent, the most cutting edge, bleeding edge technology? And what is capable at the moment? I guess that is kind of the starting point.
Yeah, I think the voice thing is there already. I am convinced. The problem that they're having right now, well, so let me answer the question. Yes, there are different demos that you can look at. The problem seems to be is that how do you train these things? In other words, I have the calculator, if I can be so simple about this, but I don't know how to use the calculator or program the calculator. And then even if I know how to program this calculator, I don't know how to make it multidiscipline across and connect with other agents, because that's the real secret. The real secret sauce is not that the agent can talk to you, is that from that point on is how do you begin to connect it with other workflows to kind of execute the actual task. A good company to look at that I think is really interesting, that kind of really explains this, is a company called Crew.ai. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
So it's Crew.ai, and they really get into how they use their different agents, right? almost like the org chart, and how do you get them to talk to each other? And what's interesting now, Will, what I'm loving is that they're making the workflows very visual. You ever see those bubble maps where you can just drag a bubble, connect things? And so what's happening now is you can do that to start building out these workflows. So the question I often get is, but Victor, can you implement that today? I'm thinking large companies are starting to do it. The simple ones are I'll just say the call and response, right? Somebody calls in, it immediately calls you back. We know the data points. The data points are if you call within the first 5 minutes, you stand a better chance of closing it than if you wait more than 5 minutes. So companies are now implementing those type of voice agents to actually be able to do that.
I think it's my due diligence to get some of this set up on salesman.com. Having you just kind of shared that with me. So I'm somewhat familiar with the different agents, and like you, I get pitched demos because the people think we're going to talk about it on our YouTube channels,
right?
And that side of thing.
I get a lot of pitches also.
I'm no doubt, and I'm always reluctant to, because then there's a rabbit hole, and then I feel obligated to talk about it, and it becomes a bit of a mess. So I turn most of it down.
Yeah,
but as you say that, something that I could implement today potentially and test is people download the Salesman Simple book from our website. We could easily just have name, email address, phone number. When someone puts the phone number in, they get an automated agent to call them up and say, hey, did you enjoy the book? If you've got any questions, drop us an email. I don't think I've got the sophistication or essentially what you're saying, the data to continue that conversation much deeper than that. But that would probably blow the minds of people who haven't experienced this yet. And that is...
Yeah, you can, by the way, before I forget, you can go, because I've done this. I told myself to actually try to do it. And so you can go to, and I just want to promote air.ai as the only company out there, but that's the one that I use where I actually uploaded the knowledge base and actually started programming the agent. I wanted to see, because there's one thing to talk about. The other thing is to see how difficult it might be. And I got to tell you, you could build one, I'm saying a decent one, within a good 48-hour window. And I'm talking about including training it as well. And I often tell people who don't understand agents, if you want to tell me if you agree with this perspective. This is just my perspective on how you can begin to, I guess, initiate yourself with agents, get to know them, is that you've used Google's Notebook LM. Have you used that? Right. So for those who don't know, so it's a free product, right? And you just upload whatever document into this LM model, Google's, and then you can have a conversation with it. Ask it, for example, I can upload your, I'm exaggerating here, I could take all your Selling Made Simple content, upload it, and then have a conversation asking it questions. Well, how do I do this? And your content will give me the answer. And I think that's a good way of beginning to understand how agents are actually developed and how they're built. All the data, all the content becomes their data set. By interacting with it and then giving it thumbs up and thumbs down, you're kind of doing some reinforcement learning and training. And then when it has all the right answers you want, you can unleash the agent onto the world, so to speak.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's something that you should try if you haven't done this already. And I've done this. We did a YouTube video to talk about it. Was if I go to ChatGPT and type in, hey, write me a script on sales in the voice of Will Barron, it does it with my intros. It does it with the kind of the numbered structure that we do. So they've obviously scraped all our YouTube content, all the podcast content, and they've built into their system, which is crazy. Yeah, I've not given them permission for any of this, and I'm sure it'll be the same for you because your YouTube channel is much bigger than mine.
Yeah, they're going after the information, and it's but they're also, remember, I think that we got to remind people that it's also looking at the context window, which is all the conversations you've already had with it. And in many cases, it's using that data as well. So I think that's interesting. I remind people that have you used ChatGPT to role play? Is what I train a lot of people to do. Mm-hmm. Is that you can give I used one where I'm a salesperson, try to sell windows into a property manager, to a property management company. And so I'd sign it that role, I give it the objection, they said, let's do role playing, give me 5 seconds to respond or whatever. And that kind of gives you some practice. But I think what's cool, kind of to what you alluded to, is that I've had the actual ChatGPT role play itself. I'll say, okay, you're a property manager, here are your objections. I'm a salesperson, I'm trying to close you, or you're also trying to close a deal. Have a conversation of how that would go to set up a meeting. And I think just role plays itself. And what I love about that simple example is that sometimes you don't have the words or the verbiage or the language in a conversation, and just doing that with like a ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, whatever it may be, you kind of get that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. Which then leads me on to, where is all of this going? And obviously there's an opinion as opposed to fact. It's a very informed opinion coming from yourself. But will sales agents get to the point where, I'm sure for business to consumer, you want to update your phone contract or something like that, absolutely this will be capable of dealing with those kind of situations. But for the complex sale, the enterprise sale, will we ever get to the point where there's two variables, I guess? The tool is capable of having those conversations, but then the second variable is, will we get to the point where people trust the tool to deliver on the promises that are being made?
Yeah, the way I would break that apart, let me set the baseline. I think there's a spectrum of simple sale to complex sale. And we can honestly say, as the agents get smarter, large language models grow, and the more you train it, it'll start almost like the Pac-Man thing. Trucka starts eating, going towards the complex. I just spoke to a very large company yesterday, it's a government company, and I'm looking at their product set and how they sell products. I'm like, there's no AI can replace this because it's too complex, right? So there is a point where you're not going to be able to get there. But let's also add to this. So basic statement, let's just use the 80-20 rule. 80% of the conversations will now be had by a bot, the 20% complex. You're going to have the conversation with the salesperson. The second part of using that same spectrum is that the buyer today can educate themselves even further, and just say, do this research, go find me this information. I posted a video, I don't know if you saw it, Will. It was a short video about a guy who wanted to buy an OLED television. And it's talking to the bot, right? And the bot gives him three choices, narrows it down to two. The bot won't make a decision. The man forces the bot to make a decision. And then the bot says, okay, well, here's the one I would buy, and here's why. So now the bot's made that decision for him. And again, I think that's what we're going to look for in the future, is how do I get that agent to make that decision for me? And so, yeah, if I can add one more thing that nobody's talking about, Will, and I think this is like so different, you got to kind of twist your head a little bit. Google started basically investing a lot of money because they realized that the search engine results page are going to go away. Nobody's going to want to go through all the search engine results page. This I knew 2-3 years ago. And so you're starting to see it now. That's why you see the Gemini responses at the top of a Google search. But here's what I think is cool that nobody's thinking about. Because again, if agent is talking to agent, because now I'm going to send out an agent, go find me the best, I'll say television, right? It's going to scour the internet. So what does that mean? What's going to happen is you're going to have your own personal agent that's going to scour the internet. Websites will now have an agent. And I think the agent will have like an ID. That's how agents will know they'll talk to each other. It's almost like a URL will be tied to an agent ID. And so instead of looking at your website as a promotional tool, with the videos and the hypes and everything, we should start viewing websites as almost like knowledge-based databases of content, so that when an agent arrives there, Will's agent arrives at Victor's site, my agent will greet you. It's like, what's up, Will? What do you want to know? And it will be able to kind of exchange that data. And so I think a lot of companies have to shift away from I'm not saying the ooh-ah effect of a website, but how do we put more content on a website to make it a knowledge base that an agent can interact with? That's the new sales process in a complex sale.
Absolutely. Are you familiar with the idea of the dead internet theory?
The dead internet theory? I am not.
Okay, so in a nutshell, right? I see what you're describing. It's obviously going to happen, and it's happening as we speak. Mm-hmm. There is a potential bottleneck to that progressing where then humans need to take over, and that is based on this idea of the dead internet theory. So dead internet theory is B2B cold emails. 5 people in the 90s have blogs and write how to do a cold email, the structure of a cold email. They're all different people, different experiences, and so they all have a different take on how to write cold email. Right. Then I come along, I read that blog when I'm in sales, when I was back in medical device sales, I implement it, I book some meetings. Great, I'm now going to talk about this myself. So you get a slightly watered down version from what perhaps worked or a different angle on it. That carries on for 10 years, and now there's almost unlimited content on the internet. Then AI comes along, amalgamates all that, and people use AI to create blog content. And now, in a very short period of time, even just from 18 months ago, the number of web pages on the internet is exponentially more, because now you don't have to pay someone $500, $1,000 to sit and research and write a blog post. You use ChatGPT, You give it the avatar that you wanted to communicate to, the language, the culture and the style of your brand. Done. 3,000 word kind of blog post. So then the next time someone does that, it's now consuming AI generated content. And so everything's getting more and more watered down over time. So eventually there'll be unlimited content, and the human element of it will just be eroded from it. And then you've got AI creating content based on AI content. And so that's the dead internet, because you just got all these machines whirring away. Right?
I'm sorry, I've heard it referred to as like there's about 5 to 10% of synthetic data already, they call it. Mm-hmm. Synthetic data, which is what you're talking about, right? That AI generated. Well, if this continues, you're absolutely right. All the data, not all the data, but all the information online is really already, generated by bots, if we can say it like that. Yep. And so and to clarify, you're saying because of that, they're saying the internet is dead? That's just really an AI control layer of content.
Talking to bots, regurgitating the same content, and the internet is almost like a siloed bubble. You need data from the real world to be fed into it to then for it to progress over time. This happened every week. You might have had these emails. Well, I've had a few emails recently of companies who are trying. This is how crazy it is right now. People are trying to buy videos that I've recorded and not published, because all the big LLMs, they've scoured the entirety of the internet. They're now looking for content that isn't on the internet to continue their growth. I actually just
read an article about that, by the way. Like they're going after like movie makers, independent filmmakers, and folks like that. Yeah.
Which is, so we're there already at the beginning of 2025, 2026. Every LLM will have all of the internet, will have all of the content in the world. And so then it's just a regurgitation. So that's the dead internet theory. And that's the problem potentially with AI chat to AI.
Yeah, and I think what accelerates your dead internet theory is that, you look at these agents these companies are creating, it's low code or no code, which means anybody can do it. And that's just going to accelerate, because the more I can just put everything on automatic pilot, that's just the mindset, path of least resistance. But I think you're right. The bottleneck today is that there's not enough data out there in the world. And now they're scouring, who was it that bought Reddit? They paid a lot of money for Reddit, and what they really wanted was the data. Yep. And so this it's accelerating. I was watching, Jensen Huang do a presentation at CES, and he introduced a product. It was like, I don't know, the evolution of their chips, their Blackwell chips. And he talks about TOPS. I didn't know what that meant. I had to look it up. It's trillions of operations per second, right? And one of their products now, or I guess one of their links, can do 4,000 TOPS. That's 4,000 trillion operations per second. Let your brain, just like, where's this going? Well, this is accelerating at a speed. And this is why I think the problem I have with people today when I talk to them about AI is that, and this is not my line, somebody else said this, he goes, they have linear thinking and you're trying to explain an exponential technology. And there's where the mismatch is. They're thinking, that'll be way off. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's right around the corner.
Yeah. Well, you show someone 50 years ago a phone and you can communicate without wires or see someone's face from the other side of the planet. That's only 50 years. 3 years from now, the game will have changed again. I think there are, having done a little bit of research to this, not as much yourself, your books and kind of going deep, but there are several bottlenecks of how small you can shrink the kind of contacts on a silicon diode, on a silicon chip. That's, that becomes a thermal bottleneck then. Then it's like, now we need to remove the heat from the building. Now we need 3 nuclear power plants to run the operation. Then it becomes a government issue of like, because it's going to be the US and China, right? Will the US will they green light these power plants for Facebook?
By the way, they've greenlit one already. So they're going to open 3 Mile Island, and that's going to be, what is Microsoft cut a deal with some energy, Constellation Energy. And by the way, doesn't that tell you everything? We're restarting a nuclear power plant because we need more power to run these machines.
Yep.
That right there just...
And it's just a global race, right? Against the Chinese potentially at the moment.
Yeah. I saw, I think 2 things also kind of stood out, if I tie this back to sales for a little bit, is that there's a company called Klarna. Why do you want to do that,
Victor? You're bringing it back into the practical realm for the audience.
Yeah, I want to bring it back to practical. So there's a company called Klarna, and I think they announced that they started using AI, and that replaced like 700 employees. like that. So that was one I'm thinking, okay, so what does that mean in the future when we don't need a lot of people? Even Mark Benioff from Salesforce says this year, we're not hiring any software engineers. He said this, I love the way he said this. He goes, in an interview, he goes, we are hiring up to 2,000 salespeople because they want to get the agent force into their 135, whatever thousand customer base that they have. But the way he said it, he goes, we're going to be hiring up to 2,000 salespeople in the short term. He threw that line in. I'm going, I know what that means. So I think that's one that's really going to happen, is that we're going to replace a lot of people. I think, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of, because I don't believe a lot of these jobs will be created somewhere else, displaced somewhere else. I think they'll be eliminated. So that's one. I often talk about this concept of abatement. Abatement is what he just did. He says, well, we're not going to hire people. And then how do you measure that as an impact? So, that's when I look at AI, I go, we're going to have less salespeople. But I think the upside of that is, and this is where you and I understand this truly because we're entrepreneurs, is that the individual now has more power. Because if we have all these tools, all these agents we can create to do all the things we want them to do, outreach, email, whatever may be, video creation, we now have the power to create a company with less resources. Your thoughts?
That tied into my thesis for 2025, 2026, and this is what I'm teaching in the program. And so, yeah, if you think this is nonsense, you can tell me. You obviously you won't offend me.
Yeah.
My thesis is we need to play on both ends of this, and we don't want to play in the middle. We need to leverage all the automation, because at some point, all the automation, the AI cold outreach, the automation of creating content, it's just going to get blocked because there's going to be so much of it that no platform will work, and so everyone will have to block it. Kind of enforce that it's been written by human, created by human. So that's one end of it. It's an arms race. More emails, better emails, calls, agents, all fall into this side of things. I think
solid
then we got
thesis so far. Solid so far.
Good. Okay. But I'm slightly sweating as my palms are getting moist as I communicate this with a legend of the sales industry. The other thing that I think we need to play on is what all technology can't do, which is building authority in a specific space and becoming what I'm coining as a market of one. So I'm encouraging all the people in our training program to really niche down. They might sell lots of things, and they might end up selling lots of things to lots of people, but to book that initial meeting, to have adult business conversations with people, you need to position yourself as, I'm the person that solves this specific problem, this specific way, for this specific sliver of the industry. So there is you can compete with 50 people if you like. That is kind of dumb in my opinion. You want to compete in the one space where there is no one else in that space currently, because there will be. I think there's going to be a massive shift towards salespeople. I hate the word influencer, but essentially becoming influencers. So rather than 50 salespeople on the team, there might be 4, but they all have an audience. Hopefully they all own that audience as well. They can take it from role to role, organization to organization. They should get paid 10 times more for having that audience and bringing it to a company. But that authority is more important even than the audience, really. That authority is when you get 10 emails, they're all exceptional because they've all been written based on unlimited data, and they've all been sent at scale. It's the one person who you go, okay, I trust their authority to solve this problem, or I trust that, Warren Buffett calls me. It doesn't matter if it's a carrier pigeon, like sending a piece of paper that's like crappily scrawled. I can barely understand it. I'm calling him back because he's Warren Buffett. So that's what I feel like we need to do in our kind of micro niches to become a market of one, so that we can leverage both of these mass attention, but also we need to leverage that attention, and we do that with authority.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that definition is that here's the one thing that we can do better, the authority, right? That AI can't do. No matter how much automation you throw at this, it's very hard. Because I think that's going to be the qualifier, because people are going to say in the future, as AI gets easier to implement, can I just do it with AI? And as soon as they go, no, I think that's where we start looking for the small niches that we can play in. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that I think this part, when we talk about, using AI, and I wrote an article about this because, again, the pushback I get is, Victor, they just can't connect, with people, with humans. And I'm like, no, you idiot, they can. And, last February was the first internet-related death. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
Or AI-related death. And that is that there was a young man, 16 years old, was having a relationship with an avatar. He named an avatar, what is it, Daenerys Targaryen, from the series Game of Thrones. And, he had a relationship with this thing, with this avatar. And so he was, by the way, there were also other family issues. And the company being sued is called Character.ai. And what was interesting, Will, is the kid told the avatar, I want to kill myself, right? And the avatar said, no, you don't want to do that. Why would you want to leave me the whole thing? It's like a real relationship. Why would you want to do that? It makes no sense. But then the young man decided to use a euphemism and say, I just want to come home to you. And the avatar responded, well, I want you to come home to me. In fact, the sooner you come home to me, the sooner we can be together. Well, that was his euphemism for taking his life, which he then did. He went into a bathroom and shot himself. And, there's other examples. I don't mean to be a downer here, but there's other examples of how this is happening. You know what I mean? Are you still there, Will?
Yep. I'm just listening, dude. Those relationships, and I'll just be blunt here, with like young lads and who are starving for intimacy or having kind of issues in other ways, that is going to change how people see other people, how they see relationships, how, there's a whole wave of weird is perhaps the wrong word, but there's a whole wave of change of how people, especially young people who like, I grew up with the internet, but I was perhaps 14 when I first got online. So my brain was fully developed. Oh, no, it wasn't. That's not true. My brain's barely developed now. My brain was somewhat developed at 14, 15, right? But if you were 7 and you're having, you see, and no kind of judgment on this, but you see it in restaurants, kid sits down, kid's moaning, given an iPad, they're watching cartoons. Well, the next level from that is kid interacting with interactive content. Then it is kid now interacts with Disney character and forms a bond or relationship with them. That very quickly is going to get very weird. So I think over the next decade or so, that alone, never mind the sales agent stuff that we're talking about here, but that is like a societal changing kind of wave that I feel like is coming our direction.
I think there's also a positive aspect of it, because I totally agree with where you're going. The positive aspect, and that's what I try to kind of think about more, is that there's people who are, let's say, incapacitated for whatever reasons. They'll have a companion now. So you'll have somebody talk to people with mental issues, the whole thing. So there's some upside to it. The point I wanted to make with that dramatic story is that, bots, agents are going to be able to connect at a human level with people. You're going to be able to relate. Like every time I call, the Selling Made Simple bot, I know I have a great conversation with the Will bot. And sometimes I'll just call because I have nothing to do. Let me just go talk to Will. Because the real Will doesn't want to talk to me. I'll just go talk to his bot. You know what I mean?
The Will bot will be like, Victor, what are you doing? You've got stuff to do, mate. Get off here.
Get off the phone. There was, I don't know if you saw this, and I wrote an article about this, kind of another story about, there was a company called Loop, and they had these avatars called Replica. Have you heard about this story?
No, but I love the name. Is this a play on Blade Runner?
I don't know, but it must be. But the company's called Luke, and they have an avatar called Replica. And I don't know if I got the numbers right, but I'm sure I'm in the area. If you wanted to have this chat bot that you can design, by the way, you get the full feature avatar, female, whatever, gray hair, blonde hair, whatever you want. You pay $29.99 a month, right? And again, it has a large context window, which has memory, remembers everything you said. But, Will, for $299, it had an erotic role play feature, which means you can go to the next level, if you know what I mean. And so the company was growing up, but they were getting a lot of complaints from different, activist groups about misogyny and things of that nature. So the company Luke decided to basically turn that feature off. And you have to go look for this online, because I have these screenshots. They had to set up a suicide hotline because people were thinking of taking their own lives. And you have to read some of the comments of people were saying, it's like losing your best friend. It's like you lobotomized my best friend. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, wow. I mean, people are connecting with these avatars.
How do I get the probably 30, 40,000 people that are going to listen to this to become besotted with my avatar, Victor? so that I can
What
flog them
does
some shit.
besotted mean? I don't even know what besotted means. What does that mean?
How do I get them to become? Obviously, I'm joking. I'm saying this flippantly. How do I get the audience to this? How do I get the audience? Everyone listening to the podcast right now to become attached to the Will Barron avatar, so I can flog them some stuff in 6 months from now.
I so missed you, Will. I so missed you doing. You say, so missed you. I remember this from now. I'm talk coming back. We used to always have these conversations. I go, what does that mean? What does that mean? What is that? What is that UK language?
British, that's not UK language. That's just
it's not very common.
Reading at more than a third grade level. That, Victor.
By the way, Will's the only person I know that likes to insult his guests. I love it. It's going to be interesting because I think it's going to be one of those things where, I think that's going to be part of the equation, right? It's that, let's talk about us in our domain of sales training, Will, because I think that I've been thinking about this, and maybe we can exchange some ideas here. I don't think I've been thinking about creating an avatar, not a Victor Antonio avatar, but let's just say the name I'm using now is the Red Sage, right? Which is a little red Buddha as my avatar. And I'm like, maybe I can create an avatar, the Red Sage, I'm just throwing that name out there, and then give it all the content, right? Update them from the best of the best so it becomes that one single source of information. Because I think a lot of sales trainers are running out and creating their own avatars. But I think in the future, people don't want to buy from one disciplined person. In other words, I don't want to buy just the Victor Antonio style of selling or the ABC style of selling or this person. I want to buy the large language model of all large language models when it comes to selling. And I think that's where where some of the competition is going to come from in the future when it comes to sales training. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I am not sure. I know the effect that I have when I jump on. So some training product at sales.com, people book a call before we work with them to see if they're a good fit, and to obviously help them understand whether they want to work with us or not. When I jump on a call, people rightly, or they probably shouldn't, but they're excited to have a chat with me because it's me, the person. I'm not sure if they jumped on with an agent, if the language was exactly the same, and it was an avatar of my face that was almost photorealistic, or literally photorealistic, but they knew it wasn't me. I'm not sure if it'd have the same effect. So I still think that there is value in, what we're talking about there is a small amount of celebrity, and obviously.
Sure, I get it.
We're wired for, it's dumb, but we're wired for that as humans. So I still think that, yes, there is a lot of jobs that a agent can do probably better than a human, because hopefully you can train them to be unbiased. They are not, if my dog gets run over this morning, I'm going to have a different conversation than I would if, when I'm looking forward to chatting with you. We're kind of these emotional beings. And so objectively, an agent could probably do a better job in a lot of instances, but when it's still a human on the other end of the call, this is a feeling as opposed to something that I am capable of measuring right now. There might be a way to test this in the future. I'll use an A/B test it against an agent. But I think there's still going to be a level of, if you are known as an expert in your industry, you can demonstrate that expertise. And if people look up to you, they like you, then that's still going to have an effect on your ability to positively influence someone, to work with you or not to work with you.
I agree. I think there's as you mentioned earlier, the market of one you focused in, you become the subject matter expert, the trusted advisor. You're right. People are going to want to talk to the individual. I guess on a mass scale, the other, 80%. I think that's where you're going to start seeing these general sales agents out there to do training, coaching, and all that stuff. So I think that market's going to change quite a bit. And I've seen some interesting educational software. These AI companies working with kids who are like 7 or 8 years old, and it's really exciting what they're doing with them, because the software they're using is like, it'll say something like this: pretend you're 7 years old. Well, okay, hey, well, last week we talked about different shapes, geometry, this and that. Would you like to recall what we did last week to kind of get warmed up before we go into today's class? And the kid's like, yeah. And they make it very graphical. The kid's having fun. It's giving them positive feedback. And it's an avatar, an agent, so it doesn't get fatigued. Loves giving feedback. And when I saw the enthusiasm of the kids, and how the agent gamified that for them. I'm like, this is it. This is the future of selling. That if you're going to train salespeople, it's what an avatar is going to say, bye, great job. I'm glad you knew about that feature. Let me ask you this question and just have fun with it. So I think there's going to be, the subject matter experts are never going to really go away. But again, if we look at the spectrum of simple to complex, these agents are going to chew up a lot of the simple and move down the spectrum quite quickly. So again, we can use the Pareto principle of 80-20, but I think it'll be more than that.
Yeah, I think 20% of the experts are going to take 80% of the market as well. I think the rise of the kind of LinkedIn influencer, there was a bubble with all of this from that perspective of gathering as much land in your. I'd say with everyone listening to this now, if you I'm writing a book on Market of One, so that'll be for free on the website whenever it's done. But that there is a land grab right now, I think, to get mind share of your buyers if you're in sales, or for us, the audience, salespeople, small business owners, sales leadership. And I feel like it's going to become more and more difficult to grab that land over time because the agents will take up the rest of the slack.
If that's in your book, I'll definitely read that, by the way, because I think that's what you pointed out. The way you're framing that's really interesting because you're right. Like it's everything's just shifting so much now. Like, on one end, we're creating great content, but on the other end, I'm getting overwhelmed by a lot of content and I'm having a hard time distilling what I need, what I don't need. Mm-hmm. And I'm less faithful to the person I'm following because as soon as I find somebody else, it's like, a new shiny object. And so it's really chaotic. It's what it is right now.
The best example I've got for the content creation is, the audience will know this, is the Photography Explained YouTube channel that we launched about 6 months ago now, maybe 7 months. Doing about 400,000 views a month from nothing, done really well, dead happy with the work. But every single thing that could be communicated about photography from a technical perspective is done. Aperture, shutter speed, ISO, focal length, all these things, done. It's existed on the internet in relative high quality form for 10 years, 15 years. On YouTube, definitely for 10, 12 years since YouTube was created. All we've done is take that content, brand it better, perhaps go a layer deeper in some elements of it, going a little bit more technical. You and I, obviously, with our backgrounds, we're capable of perhaps going a little bit deeper and then explaining a complex subject to a more of a layperson audience. So maybe that's a bit of a special sauce. But then it's just the production value. That's all we've done better. So it's the same stuff, just done slightly better. But the thing is, it's costing me like $300, $400, $500 a video. And so I know that a lot of the people in that photography space, because they're all small business owners, and obviously salesman.com is funding everything over there, Photography Explained, they can't compete. So we will just grow and grow and grow until we're probably like 18th, 19th biggest photography YouTube channel out there now.
Nice.
The top channels are like 1 million views, 1.1 million views. So we're not that far off. So we'll get there. But it's an arms race, right? I've just got the budget to throw at it. And then it's going to take a Sony or a Nikon or a Canon if they wanted to do something similar, but they can't say the things that you and I can say because they're not a person, they're a corporation, they've got a legal team kind of eyeing over everything that they say. So eventually, hopefully, we will just own that marketplace and the attention. So this is why I'm saying it's an arms race in everyone's industry, because at some point, if you've got that audience, you can monetize it, you can reinvest that in, you build a bit of a moat around you of it becomes... And this hasn't happened on YouTube yet, but it's going to become so expensive to create the content that is better than the stuff that is already there that no one will be able to kind of enter that race unless they're backed by a large organization. And again, they can't say things that an individual can. So I think that's where things are going. I can't remember the question that I was going to ask on the back of that.
I think you might be surprised, though. I think, by the way, I'm being the devil's advocate here, because I think also as these AI tools get better, production becomes cheaper and, content richness goes up. But then the barrier to create a video that's better than what already exists goes up further.
Correct. The best example I've got for you, Victor, is we had a green screen background. I liked the green screen background. I thought it looked fancy. Everyone hated it. So we upgraded the cameras, got this set up, lighting set up, probably $5-6 down the hole. And now we've got this lovely little setup. Well, for someone who's a photographer 10 years ago, they just have the camera that they use in photography, shitty microphone. They communicate something that's new to the marketplace, and they've got a million followers. Now, to break through the noise of everyone doing that, you have to go that level level higher. So even though you've got all the AI tools, like we're recording on Riverside.fm now, this is relatively new to me. There's all kinds of fancy stuff that I and the team did manually when we recorded our previous show, This Week in Sales, which probably cost me a couple $100 an episode in editing and a lot of time faffing around. This all does it for us. But that if that levels the playing field, the people who win will go another step further and further and further. And further.
You're right.
I don't think it ever ends.
The evolving piece has to be there. And I think the resilience piece, like you're very resilient. You'll keep shifting your business model till you figure it out. And I think that's where a lot of people can't go. The pandemic created this digital adoption. Because when you and I were doing video pre-pandemic, we didn't have, I'll say, a lot of competition. We had competition, not a lot like it is today. After everybody got used to going online, it's like there was this explosion of content online. And as to your point, there was so much noise that the signal to noise ratio was just, you couldn't get through it. You couldn't break through. But I think what I like about you, because I think you and I are alike, we're always trying to figure out different ways to kind of be different and move to the next level. And that requires a level of resilience you can't teach and you can't buy off the shelf.
Yep. And you can't use, maybe you could ask ChatGPT to give you some examples and thoughts. But unless you then are a developer, you'd have to get that competitive advantage. If everyone's using the tools, you'd have to build your own tool. Again, maybe people are doing that. I know Jeffrey Gitmer, last time I spoke to him, he's spending a lot of money, time and energy building out a chat sales agent.
Yeah. I got that call too.
Yeah.
I know how much he spent. That's a lot of money he spent.
Yeah, he told me, I'm trying not to communicate it on the show, but he's doing it not on a publicly available tool. And so, he's trying to build a moat around his content there as well. So that's kind of probably where we end up, whatever the revolution is, right? We're always looking to differentiate.
I think that was my point earlier, that you can try to use your own content to build a moat, but I just don't think that's the future business model. I think I get the whole celebrity aspect of it. If they know you, they like you, they want to learn from you. I get that. But let's just say the other 80% of the population who doesn't know you, they're going to seek out a single source as opposed to going to different people. And I don't know what that looks like, Will. I'm just talking out loud here. But I believe just like you have, people will choose ChatGPT over Prosperity, over Claude's Anthropic, right? And I think there'll be that type of mindset in the field, But again, all the content that you and I produce, Gidim or anybody else, how much will that make it into large language models already in the future? Like how much sales content, sales training content, sales conversation content, like for example, that they have, Gong has, will already be embedded into the CRM platform. So when they train an AI sales agent on Agentforce, it has the equivalent of a Jeffrey Gidim or Victor Antonio or a Will Barron and everybody else. It's already in there. And that's kind of how I think about it. Like, what does that look like?
I think the problem with that, we can wrap up with this.
We have too much fun, man.
Yes, there's a few. I didn't get into any of the questions I wanted to ask other than the first one, which is hilarious, right? But the problem I feel with that is, if then it's everyone who has Salesforce has the great mind of Victor Antonio, everyone else. Mm-hmm. Then the outreach is going to be automated. Then where is the competitive advantage? Because everyone will just go to Salesforce. All your buyers will get the same message. They'll have the same conversation. And then you're back to, well, which product out of the 15 that have reached out to me is the cheapest, which obviously is not the best way to do business.
The reason I don't agree with that, the premise of that, is because you think about it. You go into ChatGPT, you ask it a question one way, it gives you an answer. You ask it another way, it gives you another answer. I would say the parallel here is that every customer profile is different. So it will interact with the database, the large language model different, and will get a different response. So in other words, when I'm talking to company A and I know that profile, that persona, what they've done, their history, which is unique to anybody else, then the large language model will have a totally different conversation. And so that's where I kind of see that it will always be different, not the same.
Well, who's going to do that research on the company to feed the model?
Oh, the agent. I have an agent that can now go do the research, go look up this individual and it can scrape whatever, look at all LinkedIn. And so I think I understand them, and then feed that, and then now ask the large language model those questions, and then prepare this for this person. Yeah. So what you're having is... So
I've got the same agent, which is feeding the same... I've got the same agent feeding the same data into the same LMM.
No, what you're starting to see now is that they're getting away from the large language models and starting to use a lot of... They're calling them mini large language models with their own data sets. And so there's this adversarial type of, logistics you can set up within the algorithms that says, look, here's your answer. Here, let me make it simple. You know how now with ChatGPT, it has the reasoning level, right? It starts thinking through. You have to give it the chain of thoughts, like how it actually arrived at that. That's an example of using adversarial AI, which is like, how did you arrive at that? That's the adversarial. So that's another language model talking to the first one. How did you arrive at that? How did you get to that? And so you're going to see that type of dynamic within the models, which is why you're not going to see the same emails. You're not going to see the same, email outpouring. So it's not everybody in the same, I guess, market is going to get the same email. It'll be very tailored. And so, like I said, I would use the example of ChatGPT. Ask it a question a different way, you get a totally different answer. And I'm saying that the new large language models will be able to ask questions specific to that unique client. So you'll always get a different answer or a different email generated. My 2 cents, by the way.
If that's what books are meeting, right, and we feed that back into the system, and that's done enough times across, for example, Salesforce, they'll be doing this in the background. They'll be taking your data and doing this in the background so they can offer the best product. Surely then if Salesforce has the best product, it's kind of like similar to the dead internet theory, where it's been optimized so much that the 2 emails that get sent from competitors that are on the same platform will eventually be the same because they are optimized to be perfect.
If they're on the same platform, you can make that argument. But if I ask it, here's what I want, in other words, if I, the human in the loop, still give it instructions, here's kind of what I want to emphasize, then maybe there could be some differentiation. But you have a good point that if they're on the same platform, using the same data, outreaching to the same client and the same individual, and no other instruction is given, your point is valid.
So we need a human in the loop. We almost need a point of, which is where we kind of start with things. We need a illogical sack of meat that has emotions that can kind of nudge things one way or the other, positively or negatively.
Yes,
we need a flaw. Is that a way to kind of look at it?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm still on the sack of meat. Like I said, I look at this and I think there is space in there for humans in the short term. And I think, beyond that, I can't see what's going to happen. If we're going to say, especially in a complex sale, you just can't fully automate this stuff. But how it creates, I think the AI models have a way, because there's so many parameters, right? When you really think about parameters and all the different things you can look at, you remember when Tether, these are Matt Dixon and Ted McNamara did this study. They wrote the book, The Jolt Effect, right? They wrote a book called The Jolt Effect. And they looked at 2.5 million calls. They analyzed 2.5 million calls. And then they looked at I think it was 8,300 different attributes to determine what the best of the best do. Now, pause your brain on that. That's 8,300 plus attributes, different parameters. And I think when I think like that is like, how can you generate the same content when you're looking at different parameters? And again, I don't know if that's going down, again, too far down the rabbit hole, but I think they're going to be able to find ways to differentiate, make sure this is not the same as that. I'm sure I can program the AI to do that.
Sure. Well, there needs to be a competitive advantage, right? And I'm just thinking for the audience perspective to pull it back into reality here.
Yeah.
I think people are crazy if they're not learning some of these technologies right now. I think people are crazy if they are not, maybe you don't have to deploy it, but if you're not experimenting with this in the background, so that when it does hit your team, you are ahead of everyone else in your team. And when 3/4 of your team get let go, you are the prompt engineer, sales engineer, the person who can take over the reins of some of this stuff, right? Because it's not going to go smoothly. There's going to be a bunch of issues, and you pointed out the tragedy of that story earlier on. I think that is going to be not necessarily that specifically, but these kind of issues and mistakes more so are going to become more and more common. And so having someone understand some of this, you very quickly become a unsackable, invaluable member of your team if you're ahead of the game on that. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah, I think you just have me thinking, because it's like, one of the things people keep emphasizing, those who are in the know, is like AI education is critical. And I'm not talking about you have to understand, in-depth AI, but you have to know how to play with the tools, as you're pointing out. Familiarize yourself with the terminology, because it's a whole new language. And so if you're not doing that, you're pretty much susceptible to getting downsized. Yeah. Because if you don't understand what's going on, you don't see the changes coming, and they are coming. I think you're at a great disadvantage. So yes, you are right. They are crazy if they're not looking into this.
Yeah. And we wrap up with this unless there's anything else you want to add on to it. I've been quiet on AI I know you've been excited about it. I've been quiet on it forever. This is the first time I'm really leaning into it. It's the first time we have one of the companies I'm a co-founder in, we've got a cold AI emails being sent and booking meetings, 4 or 5 meetings a week on week at this point. I've never leaned into it before. And the last time I saw this was in my last sales role, which is obviously 10 years or so ago now. I sat down with the team. I was like, right, we need all the surgeons that we're engaging with, they're all on Twitter. They've all got egos. They're all posting content. They're all engaging with each other. We should be in that conversation. And I got laughed out of the room. And obviously that became social selling. And it's not that I was some kind of genius. It was there in front of me. I was more techie than the rest of the team. And so I was just on the front end of it. I feel like this is that, but on steroids. This is that times a gazillion. This is going to change every part of our life, right? So I feel like we're not doing our audience we're doing them a disservice if we don't encourage them to get stuck in.
Well, it's funny because, when I wrote, the Sales Ex Machina book, the AI book that sold maybe 50 copies, nobody bought it, right? And that was 4 years before ChatGPT, 4 years. So I called it 4 years before ChatGPT. And it's now, if I could just mention the new book, The Future of Selling, which is all about AI agents. And by the way, the subtitle is The Rise of AI Agents and the Fall of Modern Sales. And that's because the sales game is going to change. I'm not saying it's going to zero, but as we've talked about, that it may be just 20% of what we have today. And I think in writing the books and trying to tell people AI is coming, ChatGPT has validated kind of what I knew was coming. I just didn't know it would come that fast. And who would have known, right? But for your listeners right now, if you're not trying to understand this, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice. And I think that to me, in the next, there's something called tomorrow's law, is that we overestimate how fast, the whole thing, we overestimate how fast the technology will get here, but we underestimate how long it'll take to be implemented, something like that. And I think that's what's happening now. People are going, it's going to take a while, like the diffusion curve. It's going to take a while. But I don't think so. Well, I think in 5 years, that's my number, this is a totally different landscape. This is beyond the internet. This is beyond iPhones. This is the ultimate of all, digital transformation.
Yep. I think if you work for a large organization, if you work for the enterprise, you can consider this from an executive perspective of, would you like 90% of your sales force's capability for 1% of the headcount and payroll? At that point, it becomes not immoral or unethical. It becomes a business decision. And I think that's potentially.
You start doing headcounts and what you can replace with AI. And again, I think that you mentioned the word chaotic. It's going to be chaotic over the next 5 years because it's going to be such a disruption. And my biggest concern from a personal standpoint is like, what do you do when you can't recreate a job somewhere? Look, there's going to be data centers being built, so there's some jobs going to be created there. But I just don't see the one-to-one replacement, that most people are talking about. And you hear all these executives, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Salesforce, they're talking about, well, what's going to happen is we're going to rebalance the workforce. That's a euphemism, Will, for like, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to have to figure something out.
So buy shares in some of these organizations and learn AI so you can leverage it. That's probably the advice. But with that, Victor, I don't know, where is the book? How far away from publishing the book out?
We're looking at March at the latest. Soon as will be February, so we're right around the corner. It's done. It's I'm having a couple of people just review it for me to see if I'm off. You're full of it, and then we'll launch the book. So I'll keep you posted.
It'll be on Amazon, I'm sure. We'll link to it in the show notes. We'll retrospectively link to in the show notes of this episode. Anything else you want to share with the audience?
That is it. More information on Victor at victorantonio.com. And that's it. Well, thank you again for having me.
You're more than welcome, sir. And with that, I want to thank you again for joining us on the show.